So today, we're diving into the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance, or the MCCG. Now, if you're doing business in Malaysia, you absolutely need to know this stuff. Because this code, well, it can be your biggest risk or it can be your greatest asset.
And, the stakes are incredibly high right from the get-go. We're not talking about a simple slap on the wrist for getting this wrong. In Malaysia, failing to comply can cost you a whole lot. We're talking up to 500,000 ringgit in fines. And that's not even mentioning potential jail time. So yeah, the regulators are sending a really clear signal here. Corporate governance is absolutely non-negotiable. But look, this isn't just about dodging penalties. That's the wrong way to think about it. When you really get this right, good governance stops being a cost and starts creating real value, unlocking some massive potential for your business.
How much potential are we talking about? Well, get this. Studies show investors in Asia are willing to pay an average premium of 22% for companies that are well-governed. That is a huge vote of confidence that goes straight to your company's bottom line. So that brings us to the big question for this whole explainer, right? How do you go from just ticking boxes to actually turning Malaysia's governance code into a powerful, real-deal competitive advantage? Let's break it down. Okay, first up, let's really get a handle on the stakes. I mean, to get why this code is so powerful, you have to see the landscape in Malaysia today. It's a classic case of risk versus reward, and it pretty much defines the entire business environment. And the context here is everything. The Malaysian market is absolutely booming. We're seeing a 130% jump in the IPO market, and M&A deals are hitting $8.3 billion US. In a climate like this, good governance isn't just about defense. It's your ticket to get in on all this growth. All this focus on governance didn't just pop up out of nowhere. We had these huge, high-profile scandals like 1MDB and MISC, and they completely changed how investors think. They were, frankly, harsh lessons that without solid governance, all that market trust can just vanish overnight. So if the stakes are really that high, what's the actual game plan? Well, the good news is the MCCG lays out a really clear blueprint. It's all built around 3 core pillars of governance. And these 3 pillars, they really build on each other. It all starts at the top, right? With strong board leadership. Then that leadership is kept in check through effective audit and risk management. And finally, you communicate everything with integrity in corporate reporting. Let's break them down one by one. Pillar 1, this puts the responsibility right on the board's shoulders. They're not just watching from the sidelines. They have to set the strategy and publicly say who's responsible for what. And here's a huge update. Sustainability isn't just a buzzword anymore. It's a non-negotiable part of that strategy. And to keep things honest, at least half the board has to be independent. Okay, Pillar 2 is about building the guardrails. After the board decides how much risk the company can handle, the CEO and the CFO have to personally sign off on the systems every single year. They're literally putting their names on the line. And internal audit gets beefed up too. They now have to specifically look at things like anti-corruption and whistleblowing policies. And the third pillar, it's all about being transparent. It says companies have to give out trustworthy information, but it also expands what that even means. Now you have to explicitly report on your sustainability strategy and your performance. Investors want the whole picture now, financials and non-financials, all together. So, since the board is so important to that first pillar, the code actually goes a lot deeper. See, it's not enough to just have a board. You've got to build an effective one. So, what does that actually look like? Okay, this is really fascinating. When you look at how companies actually find their independent directors, a staggering 74% come from the personal networks of the existing board or execs. Only 8% come from professional search firms. I mean, that just screams that there's a huge opportunity to look outside the usual circles and bring in some fresh, diverse perspectives. And speaking of diversity, it's a major focus. The MCCG flat out suggests that boards should aim for at least 30% women members. And this isn't just about hitting a quota. The research is pretty clear that more diverse boards are way better at avoiding groupthink, and they just make smarter, more solid decisions. Here's another really key principle.
the separation of power. The code strongly, strongly recommends that the jobs of chairman and CEO should be held by two different people. It makes sense, right? This split is just fundamental to creating real checks and balances at the very, very top. All right, so we've got the stakes, we've got the blueprint, and we've got the board. The final piece of the puzzle is pulling it all together with the right mindset. This is where you stop thinking about rules and start thinking about real strategy. See, at its very heart, the code is all about substance, not just what looks good on paper. It's about the meaningful application of these practices to actually make the company run better. This is literally the polar opposite of a box-ticking exercise. And this is how they do it. The code is built on this really smart idea called the apply or explain an alternative approach. It's a flexible philosophy. It gets that one size doesn't fit all. It basically says, hey, you can adopt practices that make sense for your company. Just be ready to explain why your different approach still gets the job done. This right here, this is the entire mental shift you need to make. The old way of thinking sees governance as just a legal burden, another annoying checklist. But the new strategic mindset, it sees governance as a tool for success, something that drives value and a powerful competitive advantage. So when you boil it all down, good corporate governance isn't a cost you have to manage. It's the actual foundation for long-term, sustainable growth. It's what builds the trust and the transparency you need to really succeed in today's market. And that really leaves us with one final big question for you to think about for your own organization. Are you treating governance like a legal chore you just have to get through, or are you actually using it as your greatest competitive advantage? The answer to that could honestly define your future.